Hello. Can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me.
That's it. There you go.
I was saying I can't hear you, but it was me.
It was you. Hello.
Yeah. Amateur as always. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton, where we look at everything to do with the London market, change. Last week we were looking at technology. We're going to continue the theme a little bit this week, but kind of expand it out to look at scale, competition, and service, and how that's changing. As always, we've got the news, so let's kick off with that. So, Ben, I will start with a bit of news. Yes, share the news. Right. So, TinTech next week. I mentioned it last week. It's all going very well. We've got a load of London market people coming along, and it's eating my time. However, I have mainly been focused on the football this week. I'm very much enjoying the tournament. I thought Netherlands were great last night as well. But tonight it is England versus Scotland, 8 o'clock kickoff. And I was just thinking back to 96 when Gaza scored that goal. And so I'll tell you a story about this. I was in Luton at the time. I'd just finished my degree and I had a job in Luton. Brilliant. Living the dream. It was in a cool research centre. I was ringing up people about vacuum cleaners or something. Anyway, my shift was on the same day as the England-Scotland game. And so I'd missed the first 15 minutes and then I'd have to run home to see the rest of it. And I sprinted. It was a half an hour walk and I sprinted it in 10 minutes. And I was just getting to the front door and the whole street just erupted. It was incredible, and I knew what had happened, but I'd missed it.
That's it. I remember it well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It seems like yesterday, but it doesn't. It seems quite a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Yeah, it's best not to count up the years because I get worried.
Yeah, so you're right. That's been good.
Anyway, yeah, it has been good, and so looking forward to that tonight. So you've got some proper news, though, Ben. Where should we start? Should we start with the FT and ESG?
Yeah. So this is AIG, and this is quite interesting because we've been talking about ESG, and everybody's been talking about ESG. It's another acronym for everybody to worry about. Now, is it sort of piety or that sort of thing, a bit of piety? Is it just kind of worthy stuff? Does it really matter? Is it just PR for business? Or is it a real shift? Well, this is interesting because this is the Legal and General Investment Management has said that they're blacklisting AIG in certain areas of investment, not all investments, but certain areas of investment over their lack of response, basically, to the investment manager's requests to say, what are you doing in terms of reporting your environmental, social and governance performance? And they have, reading between the lines of this article, or even explicitly, it says that they haven't been responding. And Legal and General have got fed up and said, well, that's it. You're off our list then if you can't respond. They're giving them 4 years, which they said we think is long enough to be able to do it. Probably not in insurance. They probably need 20 years or so to get a report out. But the point here, and I think someone said this on LinkedIn when it came up, was, is this the start of real action? That it's certainly a wake-up call for business if this is happening. That you could imagine they'll start to say, we're not buying insurance policies from you, and then hit them. That really hits them where it hurts. So be interesting to know what they're saying internally at AIG about this. Others will be hit too. It's not only AIG, but several are. And L&G is the biggest, LGIM, sorry, is the biggest investor in the UK. So this is a big statement. And I think that I was just reading Gillian Tett in the FT. She's been writing about this a lot, and she's done some really good understanding videos about ESG. And she does one which is, she says, really, to think about ESG, you've got to think about it that businesses are as farmers, so they're both there for the harvest and to make a profit on the harvest in any given year, which is fine, which is what business do. But they're also custodians, if you like, of the landscape. So that's a more longer term thing, and that's what's really happening to business. So that, their cultivation can't damage the environment and those sorts of things. So this is really what's the analogy for business now. And therefore, what she's saying is, if you ignore that social context, they will face a backlash, and it won't. And this backlash is exactly what's happened here, which is it's come initially from investors, but it could just as easily come from consumers. It could come from all sorts in the future. So it's very, very, very interesting and significant, I think.
Yeah, I agree, actually, because we've got quite a few, a lot younger than me, working in my organization, and this stuff is it's really important. They base buying decisions on what a company does and how it acts, and that's really interesting. And we've talked about this before, but what's a generation? It used to be 25 years. It's probably now 10 years, a generational shift. There's definitely a shift in attitudes and the way that a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old will think about things and operate. So so that pace of change, I think, is what I'm trying to say, will come very fast, I think, for organizations. And if you don't have at least some kind of view on how you're going to approach this thorny issue, let's face it, I think you could get caught out rapidly.
Yeah, and it's all about brand damage in the end, isn't it? And we all know that brand damage is an issue, but it's often left very, very late by companies to realize that their brand is incredibly valuable to them. I don't know why. I think it's often a real blind spot for boards, particularly in financial services, around the brand and how important it is. And insurers, I think, need to really, really step up around understanding about their reputation and the softer stuff, and not just fall back all the time on thinking we're fine financially, the balance sheet looks good, what's the problem? Thinking they can weather these storms or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about Hulk Hogan.
Well, look, the whole thing, I get fed up with the old Marilyn Monroe story and showing her legs and things. And this could now take over from this. The Hulk Hogan story is basically, it's involving our old friends Hiscox, like they wanted to be in the news again. And some sex tapes that were released to a company called Gawker, Gawker, who then subsequently published these sex tapes about Hulk Hogan. I have not seen them, I will say, and so it turns out that there was a settlement for let me just get this right, $60 million for emotional distress. That's a lot of emotional distress.
Yeah.
And 55 million in economic damages, which, given it's Hulk Hogan, I can probably understand. But anyway, so over $100 million has been awarded, and then Hiscox has a policy in place, which is, I think, is a £500,000 thing, which is why they're drawn into this. And in this case, the rather unfortunately named Cox Radio, which I thought initially was a joke. I thought that just has to be a joke. But anyway, so we've got Hiscox and Cox Radio, and then Hulk Hogan sex tapes. It's all just perfectly playing into a great narrative. And apparently Hiscox have settled now, so that it's kind of okay. So yeah, so the Hulk Hogan insurance policy, that's the new Marilyn Monroe's legs.
Right. There we go. Well, I gotta say, I did miss that, but I'm glad you brought it to our attention. So yeah. I think what I'm going to do is press the button and move on. So let's go to big news, big merger news. which is obviously Willis Towers Watson, Aon Willis Towers Watson. Now, this is particularly interesting and is going to feed into kind of our main topic of conversation, isn't it? It's
so this clearly a bolt out of the blue. Clearly, they didn't expect this. Competition authorities have been reasonably quiet about this deal, and initially it looked as if it was going to go through. So now we've got the Department of Justice issuing a complaint about this. Now, this is really interesting because this hasn't come off some major inquiry. This has come off a chance statement that was found, I think, in an email or a text, which is one of the senior, we don't know whether it's a Willis or an Aon person, I think it might be a Willis, has said, we operate in an oligopoly, which not everyone understands. In other words, we will be in a position of huge power and influence when this merger happens. And this has kind of triggered this response from the Department of Justice. And they are saying that this is damaging to competition. They're scrambling now, Aon and Willis Towers Watson, now to divest more to satisfy, and also they've issued a statement saying that the DOJ does not understand the nature of the deal, and a few other people have come out to say the same thing. But nonetheless, I think this is really fundamental. I'll just refer again to the FT and their comment on this, that basically this is a significant step in by the regulation and the authorities, and it's a sign of the future for every business, every part of the consolidating insurance market to think about, which is that just coming together because you've got no other option as a power play is not going to wash necessarily with the authorities. And that really is sort of what they're saying, is that both Aon and Willis were kind of both in tax efficient businesses doing okay, but as they saw it, the only option was to merge. And that the risk of that for the authorities is that really is not enough in terms of delivering value to the market in a capitalist economy. It's really and could of course result in higher prices for customers and damage to the system. So I think it's opens up other things as well, and it links into some other, particularly what we're going to just watch in a second, but also the whole debate about a digitalizing world and where opportunity lies, because the regulator is saying that we can't have these massive great companies, these incumbents, just getting together and controlling everything, because that's not how the market works. We want to encourage smaller players, disruptors, people like that to do well. So this must be music to the ears of the McGills. I know Gallagher has already said, thanks very much, send some more stuff our way, divest some more businesses and we'll take them on. But it's about the regulator saying that this is about a healthy economy as well. So it's gone way beyond the original insurance market deal. And who knows whether this could be the end of the deal. It probably isn't. It will probably go through with more divestments. But it definitely means that anybody going forward now for these very big deals has to think about shareholder and customer value.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a nice segue into kind of our main topic of discussion, where we're kind of looking at scale. What did I say? Scale, competition, and service. And what I thought we would do, just to kind of move the conversation on, is play a couple of clips from it was more a GI digital clinic that we ran in February of this year, where we're talking about some of these issues and the digitization of businesses and what they mean. In this first clip, we're talking, and the reason we're playing them is because I think some of the themes resonate with the London market, and that's, I think, the interesting point about these clips. And the first one is around seamless and frictionless process, which we're always talking about, whether that's in the context of Blueprint 2 or individual organizations trying to streamline their service proposition. So let's play this clip, and then we'll come back and we can talk about it.
And we know that digital experiences have genuinely been quite difficult to make seamless. And so we also know that insurance, generally speaking, as an industry, is not particularly a friction-free business model. And so we've been working at Generali very hard to try and reduce the friction model, the friction points within the business. And the first way we've done that is by trying to actually simplify the language that we use. So we have a program in Generali which is called B1, which is to make all of our documents, our communication, all of our interaction with customers as simple and as straightforward as possible, not just from ourselves, but also from our agents, from our distributors, and from our third party as well. So that's the first thing. The second is we've actually set up a program on how do we make the experience seamless and omni-channel and therefore consistent. And that means how do we set up all of our different channels in ways that are going to be able to give the customer a consistently high level of service and of interaction. And we've launched a mobile hub, so the customer interaction hub, in about 14 of our markets, primarily in Europe, but also some in Asia, to give that consistent experience. We've augmented that with an agent hub, so a mobile interface for our a web interface for our agents to be able to interact with both ourselves and our clients. We are very agent dependent in Generali, of course. And then we've also just literally launched an employee app in terms of interacting with our employees in a more efficient and seamless and consistent way. So it's all pointing to simplicity. It's all pointing to consistency. And I would say that during the pandemic, and that's been for the last 12 to 15 months now, we've seen levels of expectations from our customers rise further still. We've seen their needs rise in terms of wanting to know that somebody is there at the point of their need. In some cases, those needs haven't been met by some of our customers because nobody had forecast this. And therefore, it will leave some lasting questions in terms of how do we evolve our proposition, how do we evolve our business model, and how do we continue to try and make this interaction as simple and friction-free as possible going forward. So we're by no means done. The question is still open, and we have a lot of work to do still.
So I think that's a great clip to kick us off, I suppose. Talking about friction, I think there's a number of really interesting points. Steven Zuanella from Generali. Generali, firstly, is a massive organization, plays in many countries, in many markets. So it's, this isn't a small outfit. And for them to have, and we've talked about this, the simplification of language, what are we talking about? And for them to have an actual program around that, I think is really refreshing. And really good. And this kind of crystal clear vision around the customer to make things simple, to make things consistent, to make things seamless, taking friction wherever they can, taking mouse clicks out of processes. Simple things, but they make a massive difference to customer service. And I think when you listen to Steven, he's so passionate about it that these small incremental changes that you can make transform the experience that you have as a customer. So I think it's really great, and there's tons of stuff that we could talk about off the back of that.
Yeah. So my take is that it's interesting that these are essentially IT people, as I'd call them, talking about what's changing from their end of the telescope. I think that you start to listen to language and words like omni-channel, which is kind of in the mainstream, that's what we would expect. It's a bit of an odd phrase. We'll be fed up with it in about 6 weeks, but it does say that they're going to be communicating through all of the available options for people. So you start to see and visualize what that looks like and what that feels like. And to do that, you have to have, good front ends. You have to have, as you say, frictionless things happen, and you can't do all that unless it works. And so that's really important. I think it's what's also will be interesting for me is how you join this up with the customer experience, which you start to touch on here, which is what is that experience that you expect? What do they how do they leave with that good feeling from using the product or the service? And they don't care about the technology, obviously. What they care about is it just works for them. But I think this is beginning. I always say, this discourse, what people are saying, the social discourse, it may seem superficial, but this is sort of people in positions of real influence and power with investment to make, talking about these small differences are big differences, and also saying that they're not easy to do. They're not easy to do, but we are doing them.
Yeah.
So the language has changed, and I think the other interesting thing is that they're saying, well, customer expectations are still rising. So there's a very clear link there, which is I don't know how they define that, because everybody says that, but everybody's saying, look, if we don't meet customer, so that's the burning platform. If we don't meet these customer expectations, then we will suffer competitively. Is the backdrop, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can build on those points with this next clip, where we're really talking about how technology, you need to make sure the technology enables your people to be able to deliver the service that you want to deliver, to meet those customer expectations. So let's play this next clip, and then we can come back and talk a little bit more about that.
What we're seeing across Europe at the moment in our customer space is, the expectations towards digitals are there for a long time, but I think what has been pushed by the pandemic is another desire for more transparency. People really would like to understand what they are covered for. They would like to understand why they probably are not covered. And this goes also back to the simplifying the journey. And I think one important piece, and this goes back to the operational side, is that any insurance company needs to enable the people that are in contact with customers. They need to enable them with integrated solutions. They need to enable them with insights from data and analytics, so that they can provide really excellent service to the customers in the moment when they have contact with them, right? And also another level that is very important is pure omnichannel or real omnichannel experiences, and not like what I would call multi-channel experiences.
They're omni-channel, multi-channel. As I said, this is more of a GI thing. What I took away from this in the context of London Market is you need to enable your people to provide the service. And to your point, Ben, nobody cares what the technology is. You just need to be able to use it to do your job better, or to cut out some time. There's a great example from Darren Sharp, is a CIO of Tokyo Marine. And he talked about just doing some simple stuff that COVID had made them appreciate. So he could no longer sign the checks because no one was in the office to pay for whatever it is he was paying. So he said, well, why don't we introduce like a Adobe DocuSign to the finance department, and we can just do the signs. And of course that enabled them, because they didn't know that, it just suddenly freed up their mindset to go, okay, what else could we do with this electronic signature stuff to become more efficient? And so it's about enabling your people and your workforce to do their job. I think it's a great clip, actually.
I'm struck by Rene's point there about transparency, and I'm also struck by the language that these people are using. A few years ago, there would have been tons of jargon, all sorts of things that nobody understood, that were just really about tactics within the IT function, and they'd be talking about, how to do that. I think when you talk to some people in London, they still talk like that. I think even things like talking about APIs and all that sort of thing, nobody other than people who work in the actual technology knows what an API does or cares, and I include myself in that. But what they're talking about here, so simple ideas, just think of the language, simple ideas, omni-channel, yes, but it's about experiences, and Rene uses the word real. So all the time their conversation is moving closer to the customer, which we talked about last week a bit, which is that they're trying to speak in the language of the customer, not in the language of the IT department. And that's a big shift for me. And they're looking also at outcomes. They're not looking at just just getting paid to do the job day in, day out of IT, plugging things in and not plugging them in, and introducing new software or the latest Microsoft update. That's not what they're talking about anymore. They're talking about a real role that really matters, and it's very encouraging. I think I'd also say, and this maybe goes a bit prefacing the next clip, which is that there's also a sense of how challenging it is for these large organizations. And I tell you what it says to me is it's opening up the space for smaller disruptive players, mediums, to come in, mid-market players to come in and really challenge them too. And I sort of feel that must be at the back of their minds as well.
Yeah, and that's actually a nice segue into this clip where Stephen from Generali again is talking about decision making, the speed of decision making, and the need to kind of build a culture around decision making. So let's play the clip and then we'll come back and talk a bit.
I just wanted to turn to the point you made about speed, because that sounds like a long time, 12 to 18 months to develop and have that conversation. Is that because organizations are risk averse, or do you think actually COVID has perhaps punctured that and that timeline and we can speed things up? Have you got any thoughts, Stephen?
Yeah, so I'll give you the honest answer, which is we've had to move very quickly in the last 12 months at a speed at which we've never seen before, probably within the business. But I would say that generally speaking, and the word speed is the sum of many different factors. It's culture, it's decision-making process, it's technology, it's politics, it's lots of different factors, and they all go to the detriment of speed. And so to improve the speed, we need to improve the underlying factors that drive that ultimate velocity and speed. And that's a number of those different things. So we're working in Generali specifically on the culture of the organization. So how can you make decisions, for example, in 3 steps rather than 10? Who do you need to involve in those? Because again, when you're in large organizations, sometimes you get bogged down into endless committees that just never make any decisions. How do you then get the technology in place, as already been said before, that enables us to make quicker changes, not so much the actual running of the business, but changes. So how can you bolt on solutions that can allow us to change in a quicker way? And then how do we work in an agile way that really makes us make decisions and actually implement changes in a smaller, more granular way, but more frequently and quickly to help our customers? So we're doing all of those. I don't think we have the magic bullet answer, I'm afraid. I think it's going to be a persistent focus on each of those different areas and possibly more, but we're working hard on it. And I think what COVID has done is it has told us the art of the possible, because if we had said 2 years ago, we're going to change all of our distribution from face-to-face to remote in a month, I think people would have laughed you out of the room, but we did it. And so it tells you that it is possible. It's all up here. And with obviously the structures and the capability of the organization and limitations that brings.
Simple, isn't it? It's direct. It's talking about culture. It's talking about the factors that influence speed. We're not using 3 letter acronyms that could mean anything. It's refreshing to hear that level of depth around trying to change an organization, and especially the decision making by committee, which in the London market is just unbelievable.
Well, yes, it's good. It's honest, and it feels real. It doesn't feel like a conversation in the IT department, as I said before. I think the forced element we all know about, but also I think the interesting thing is about the mindset change, is that lots of this is just in the institutional mindset, if you like, that things can't change or don't have to change. I think, as John Muir said, if you don't need to, you won't transform. But because that has happened, this has all started to work. What else I think is important? Well, smaller, frequent iterations, trying things out, experimentation, not expecting everything to work first time, not having to be held to account through all of those committees for everything that goes wrong, saying let's try, go for stuff and learning from it. So this is I think what that really is what agile means. I think is that you just constantly keep doing things and you don't stop and get frightened of doing them. You keep going, and each time you learn and you move forward. So I think that's good. Again, and I think I said before, you did the whole language, as you've just said, is changing. So soft and hard, well, much less hard language really about the hard wiring, or that it's the software's there, right? Isn't it? That's the point. Is the software already? Nobody's saying, oh, we need a system to do X, Y, and Z. We know it does. It's just it doesn't apply. It hasn't been applied in the insurance industry. Everybody's saying the same thing. Is that we can see from from the things we deal with in our normal lives that these things are all possible. Software has moved on amazingly. But why is it not applicable in the industry? And we know why, because of culture, because of institutional resistance, and because of legacy systems, and because of all the other, obstacles that were just described. But the prize is there. And I think the means is that you can bring in relatively cost effectively lots of these different types of tools and solutions that actually do fix things. Whether we'll look back in years to come and say that worked, I don't know, but it's definitely also a change from the old enterprise mentality, isn't it? And the trouble is, I still think Lloyd's has got some of that enterprise mentality, and that's why this conversation in the GI space is so different.
Yeah, I think you're right. And to bring it full circle back to your piece of news about the Aon Willis sort of merger for the reasons of scale, you kind of wonder in this kind of future digital world that is rapidly approaching us, whether it is going to be those large organizations with a lot of cash at their disposal that are going to leverage this digital and make the competitive advantage, or whether it's going to be the smaller players, the more agile players that can move faster, might have less resources, but their speed and agility means that they can take market share. I think that's also a big something to consider, not a big issue.
No, I think that's such an important point, Jeremy. I think it is about that. I think it's about how does competition evolve when there's all these opportunities. The idea of the very big digital global players has a lot of appeal in lots of ways, and people will. I'd probably be one of them that argues that at the end you do need that kind of investment for global type institutions and businesses, but the insurance is a big world, right, with lots of products and lots of opportunities, and that's the great thing about working in it. These digital tools and things can be bought very cheaply now. They're not expensive anymore, so they're open to the small players. They're not the exclusive domain of the large players and the large IT functions. And I think that's why the language is changing, because they're no longer the legacy enterprise power centers of the businesses. They are still doing a lot of that because of legacy, but it's true. These smaller players can come in. This is not just in insurance, but it's beginning to happen everywhere. There's a great Harvard article I was reading about how we're moving from a mass market era into one which is called the age of diverse markets. So that's, for me, a really interesting concept, is that anybody can be in these businesses. And there's good examples in the insurance business. Some of them I think are still going down the traditional route of how does underwriting work, but I think they should start to look at what's the customer experience, what's the underwriter, what's the broker experience, applying some of those more, if you like, consumer principles, if you like, within this B2B environment.
Yeah, and I think you can also use that lens to look at it internally within your organization. To my point around generations, you have your 20 to 30-year-old and your 30 to 40-year-old. That's already within your workforce, within a large organization. You're now going to have many more generations that you'll need to be able to have that diverse range of thought and opinion in order to meet these different customer groups as well. And I think that means that organizations' structures need to become flatter, and you need to, get rid of this kind of control and command, very tall hierarchy that we see still in the London market, and try and bring in the youth and the diverse ideas and thoughts into where decisions are being made, because I think that will then drive some of the transformation that's needed, because those people with the ideas will just go, we know what we want to do, but we can't do it on this stuff. So we need a plan to get around it, do something differently, set up something new. We just need to do it. Or we're going to walk. We're going to go somewhere else.
And I think that some people will say, if you look at it from the tech perspective or the insurtech perspective, I think that is one of the lenses. But to me, that's too narrow a lens. I don't think it is about insurance. I don't think it's about the tech or the insurtech or the software or the tools anymore. I think it's about the people and the culture and the change that's happening in the whole business. And I think it's about entrepreneurialism and competition and people who have ideas, great ideas. I think to some extent, too many of the ideas are coming now from technologists, as it were, who say, and we've had those people on this show. I don't in any way denigrate what they're doing, and everybody is going to take the opportunities as they see them. But I still think that the real driver is going to be the customer experience, the experience of people and what they expect, and that the tools, the software, the technology, that's all they are. They'll just enable something that's already happening. And they're not leading it out in that sense, is what I'm really saying.
And I think, just to clarify my point, I'm saying that if you haven't got those tools available for those ideas to flourish, then you're not going to be able to. Well, you're not going to be able to move forward.
No, but the reality, of course, is that, and you and I have this in our business, and we know that, is that we have people who come in and say, well, young people who come in and say, well, I'm cool with these. I can run these things. I can buy these tools off the cloud. I can buy them off the internet. They're in your business. Not 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later after a planning process. They're there within 10, 30 seconds of a download. Yeah. And suddenly you're producing something quite different that allows you to package your product differently, to market your product differently. So the speed, you're not really saying that. To me, there are not big obstacles to this. You just recruit the right people who know where to get the right things, off the shelf, most of it nowadays. So there should be no obstacle. I mean, the world of apps and software has exploded, and it will continue to do so because there's money in it, basically. And so if you can't, you've got to be absolutely useless if you're not using some of these tools and deploying them in your business these days, and you haven't got it, you'll be dead. So.
Yeah, indeed. Good. Right. That was fun. Like the clips. Good discussion.
That music got a bit annoying though, didn't it? Third time round.
Yeah, it's not really. Those clips weren't really designed for us. I stole them.
I know. Yeah.
I have got more music. I thought I just want to play this again because I like it. And this could be the theme music for our new item, which is "What Are You Wearing in the City" this week.
Okay.
Enough of that. Yeah, we'll do that next week, shall we? What are people wearing?
I could. Yeah, if people can write in, I can tell you what I wore in my first meeting this week. I wore a suit and a shirt. Big mistake, slight mistake, and everybody else was in jeans and shirts, but they all had jeans on. So I felt slightly, old-fashioned, really. So I'm now a bit in a quandary. As I mentioned to you just before the show, Jeremy, I bought some clothes though, so I'm hoping that my new wardrobe will be appropriate for some more meetings next week.
Great. So next week we will have what did you wear in the city? Great. Good stuff. Right, what are we doing this weekend? I assume you're watching the football, Ben.
I'm watching the football. Looking forward to that. Should be good. And then it's Father's Day on Sunday, so my wife has lined up for me to have a really great day of dismantling my son's bunk bed.
Is that what you asked for?
Funnily enough, I didn't actually ask for it, believe it or not, but that's what I'm doing. I did slightly question the comparison between what she has on Mother's Day and I do on Father's Day. But anyway, there we are.
No, don't go there. That's the.
Don't go there.
That's the lesson. Yeah, I'm going to be watching the football too, and we'll catch up next week and see where we are. I've got I never told you I've got tickets week on Saturday.
Oh wow, great, good for you.
First knockout.
Oh great, yeah. Well, they're talking now about reducing the social distancing for the finals, aren't they? So that they'll otherwise the finals will get moved. So
right. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Should be good.
Yeah. Come on, England.
Yeah. Oi. Right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We shall see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Enjoy the weekend. Bye.